Hello and welcome to Tech Deals. Are you looking for a premium top-tier X370 AM4 Ryzen motherboard? You have definitely come to the right place. This is the MSI X370 XPower Gaming Titanium motherboard, and it is a beast. This thing is absolutely top dog when it comes to X370 boards. Are you looking for a motherboard to install a Ryzen 7 1700X or 1800X? Do you want to do heavy overclocking? Do you want to get maximum performance out of your computer? Are you looking for a motherboard that justifies the purchase of a top-tier gaming graphics card? Or do you want a motherboard that's usable for light workstation use, that could have lots of devices attached to it, that has premium expansion options? You have definitely come to the right place. Now, this motherboard is not for everyone, and I will talk about an alternative option here in a minute. But if you want the top dog board, you definitely should check this motherboard out. Now, this motherboard is just under $300. It's currently about $280, give or take $10 on Amazon and Newegg. Links in the video description below will take you to both Amazon and Newegg. Check both places. Sometimes it's a little bit cheaper at one or the other, and buy it where it makes the most sense for you if this motherboard is what you end up deciding to go with. Now, I said before, the Ryzen 7 1700X and the 1800X, those are the only two CPUs you should be installing on this board, not even the 1700 non-X. This is a top dog board for the top dog processors. Now, if you are looking for a Ryzen 5 motherboard or even a Ryzen 7 1700 board, then my recommendation would be to take a look at one step down from this, the excellent MSI X370 Gaming Carbon Pro, which you can see behind me. Yes, it was put there on purpose. That motherboard is $100 less than this one. It has fewer overclocking options, not a lot, but a little bit. It has less power delivery to the board. It doesn't have the BIOS flashback option. It doesn't have the LN2 slow boot option. There are some things missing from it. Now, for the average user going for a mid-range system, it's a better value. You don't need those things. But if you are looking at a 1700X or an 1800X, then this might very well be worth the extra $100 over the Gaming Carbon Pro. The base features of these boards are all very, very similar. The chipsets are the same, but MSI has added quite a few extra features on top of what the chipset includes to really make this a better overall experience. The power delivery on this is exceptional. Not only do we have an 8+4 CPU power connector at the top, but we have an additional 6-pin PCI Express power connector directly to the motherboard on the bottom to make sure that power delivery is never an issue for extreme overclocking. Two small points I would like to make. When I do unboxing videos, usually I've never actually used the product before. I have used this. In fact, the X370 XPower Gaming Titanium was sent to me by AMD as part of my Ryzen 7 press kit. So all the early benchmarks that I did, all the testing I did with Ryzen was done in one of these boards. But it was a press board that was sent to me by AMD, which is why there was never an unboxing, overview, or build video with it, because I never had the retail kit. MSI was kind enough to go ahead and send me another one of these, but in a full retail box. This is exactly what you would buy if you ordered from Amazon or Newegg. And this is going to be what I install my Ryzen 7 1800X into and become my new production machine. I currently use the 1700, but I have found that my 1800X chip does overclock better than my 1700 does, and so that's going to become my new production machine. This, along with this 1800X and some other nice premium top tier components, are going to make for an awesome build video series. So if you are not subscribed to my channel, please do so, because there will be a full 1800X build video series coming up very soon on my channel. There will also be a Ryzen 5 1600 build video series coming up with that Gaming Carbon Pro that you saw back there as well. So I will put that chip in there and do a more mid-range build as well. One final point before I actually get to the unboxing itself is I want to briefly mention the B350 chipset. Now, you probably aren't interested in a B350 chipset if you're seriously considering a $280 board and Ryzen 7 processors, but just for the purpose of completeness, I'll mention it. The X370 is the top tier Ryzen chipset. The B350 is the mid-level mainstream chipset. You can overclock all Ryzen processors on both boards. You don't have to have an X370 in order to overclock. However, some of the X370s have better power delivery and better overclocking features than the less expensive B350 boards do, although they cost less, so they can be value for the money. What the B350 boards are really lacking is support for NVIDIA's SLI. They're lacking some USB ports and some expansion options. They generally have fewer slots, fewer ports, fewer expansion options. They are a cut down version of the X370 chipset. Now for Ryzen 5 processors, I think they make an excellent choice. I could even make an argument for putting a Ryzen 7 1700 on one if you're going to use the included Wraithspire cooler that comes with the 1700. But if you are considering any of the X processors, the ones with an X after the name, such as the 1700X, those should absolutely not be put in a B350. You definitely want to be in a higher end X370 board for better overclocking, because that's really the point of buying the X processors, is additional headroom for overclocking, better binning for better overclockability. Okay, that's enough overview. Let's open this up. I'll show you everything that comes in the box, and then I'll talk about some of its key features. This is a very nice board. As I said before, I've already used one of these, so I already know how nice it is, and I am looking forward to doing my 1800X build in it. By the way, side note, this is Velcro, so the noise you hear, it opens up and looks very nice inside. It's very shiny, isn't it? Not that that's important, but if you care about such things, it looks very nice. So we simply open the top, and the flap comes off, and one nice thing about this packaging is that there are two easy handles for pulling it out of the box. You don't have to just turn it upside down and dump it on your desk. Put your fingers into these slots, and it slides. Oh, look at that. Instead of being in an ugly, pardon the reflection from my lights, instead of being in an ugly anti-static bag, it comes in a nice protective box with a plastic cover with indentations designed to hold it in place. I have said this on my channel many, many times. If you've watched my channel before, then you know this. Premium products come in premium packaging. Cheap products come in cheap packaging. And that's very, very nice. We'll just set that right there for the moment. What else is in here? Oh, we have another box. We have a whole separate box for all of the accessories. We'll open that in a second. Is there anything else in here? Nope. The rest of this is just an empty box. For those of you curious, yes, there will be an unboxing of that Gaming Carbon Pro back there, as well as probably one or two other boards. I do have, set that right there. Sure, there we go. I do have, actually, I'll move to the side. If you look on the bottom right there, you will see an MSI B350 board. That is getting the Ryzen 5 1400 for a budget build. What is in this box? Opening this stuff is so much fun. I've done it like a million times, but well, not a million, but I've done it a lot of times and it's still fun. Okay, we have a SLI bridge, but not a high bandwidth bridge. Do they include two of them? They don't. Okay, that actually surprises me. Okay, ding one, MSI. Why is there not a high bandwidth bridge in here? Not that it's a big deal. Because after all, at the end of the day, for anything short of high refresh rate gaming or multiple monitor gaming or 4K gaming, a standard bridge actually works fine. Put a high bandwidth bridge in there. Wow, oh, these are nice. Okay, take a look at these. Let's see if we can get the camera to see those. These are the SATA cables, the serial ATA cables, and there's a bunch of them in here. And instead of being black, they are silver or titanium colored, I suppose, to match the board. Those look very, in fact, I'll go ahead and open these up so you can see what they look like better. In my handy trash can. If you watched my channel last year, I had a big trash pile next to my desk. I actually have a proper trash can now. So you can see you need a good backdrop, I'll hold it. There we go. Silver cable, get the light to reflect it. If you like such things, that's cool. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can't remember the last motherboard I unboxed that had 6 serial ATA cables. No, these aren't expensive. I understand that. But the fact that there are 6 SATA ports on this board, and it comes with 6 cables. So if you plug something into every SATA port, you can have matching cables. That is very nice. This is, oh, very nice. It's an extension and it's 2 cables. The RGB lighting. There is an RGB header on this board, so if you want to create Christmas tree on your desk, if you want, to put a light strip, RGB light strip around inside your computer. This is an extension cable so that you don't have to start the RGB strip at the board. You can plug this in and then start the RGB strip where you want to. Very nice. Is that 2? Or splitter? That might be a splitter, actually. That is a splitter. Okay, so that gives you that lets you split and gives you 2 RGB headers. That's a fair. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and open this. Let's take a look at that. I don't think I've seen one of these as a splitter before. Yeah, it is a splitter. Take a look at this. This is why I opened it. Look at the length of the cables. That's nice. That's longer than most of these. So you plug this end into the board, and then these 2 are what you would plug your RGB light strips into. And so that gives you 2 of them, and you can separate it, well, further than I could even put it on camera. So if you wanted one along the top and one around the bottom of your case, this is plenty long to do that. Very nice. We have awesome MSI Gaming Series Dragon logo. This is one of those metallic looking stickers for like the front of your case if you want to show off what you have in your system. It's a nice looking logo. Use it, don't. We have the IO backplate IO shield, and I'll go ahead and open this up so you can get a better look at it. Sorry for the noise. This is nice. I'll hold that up to the camera. This is screen printed. So the words of everything on the back are actually printed on here. We have our BIOS flashback USB port plugged into. Really quick note for those of you curious. If you have a failed BIOS update, if you're doing extreme overclocking, if you do something that screws up your BIOS and your board won't boot, or you have a crash during a BIOS update and the board becomes unbootable, you can make a USB thumb drive on another computer, for example, or make one in advance. With the BIOS, rename the BIOS file msi.rom on the root of your USB thumb drive. You can stick it in there, and then on the board itself is a BIOS flashback button, which overrides the BIOS. You can boot, hold that button down, and it will auto-update the BIOS and load it, even if you've completely screwed up the BIOS on the motherboard, so that you have a recovery option. This feature is not on the lower boards. That Gaming Carbon Pro doesn't have that feature. The B350s don't have that feature. So if you are an overclocker where you like to play with a lot of features and you're worried about ending up in a non-bootable state because you've totally screwed up your system because you've messed with maybe settings that didn't work, you have the option to load a fresh factory default BIOS no matter what you've done to your computer. That's one of the things that separates this from the mid-tier boards. That's nice. There's also a clear CMOS button here. Now, that's not for BIOS flashbacks. That's if you just put in settings where the system won't boot to Windows, for example, or you're having trouble getting into the CMOS because you've input clock speeds or DRAM speeds that are preventing you from getting into there. You can simply press that and it will simply reset these settings, your overclocking settings, your RAM settings, back to the default settings to let you get into the BIOS and change it. So you can just reach around to the case and tap that and you are good to go. That feature is also not on the Gaming Carbon Pro or the B350 boards. That's why this is geared towards overclocking. That's why this is geared towards extreme performance. That's why I would only put the X processors on this, because between the BIOS flashback and the clear CMOS, which I've used many times in my experimentations, it's so handy to have. Very, very nice. Very nice. Then we have a manual. Ooh, look how that's a very thick manual. Take a look at how thick that manual is. Now it's probably 27 languages. Yeah, it is. How thick is the actual manual? Oh, it's still actually pretty good. Okay. This portion here is the English portion. And MSI provides, okay. I'm not going to hold every page up to you, but it does have block diagrams. It does have diagrams of what every jumper and every pin on the board is. This is a good manual. It does contain a list. Where is it? Well, I can't find it, but it does contain a list because I've looked at the manual online. I did not, by the way, get one of these with my press boards. I mentioned earlier in the video that this is a retail kit. I got a press board. I never have actually had the manual before. That's nice. There is a 2-digit LED readout on this board that gives you status of what the machine's doing. If it hangs during boot, if you're trying to overclock and you're having a problem, it lets you know what is the hang up, what's the problem. And there's a table in here you can look up to see what the problem is. So very nice. We have a driver CD, which you shouldn't need. Windows 10 supports the Intel network card on here, so if you have this plugged in, you can get online. All the drivers for this are included with Windows 10, so you actually shouldn't need this. And I would recommend that you download the latest version of the MSI drivers and tools from MSI's website rather than use what's on a CD. You can if you have to, if you're temporarily without an internet connection, but I would skip that and download the latest stuff. Stickers. Oh, cable identifiers. These are nice. I mean, none of this is required, but these are really nice. Basically, these provide white spaces to write on, and you wrap these around your cables, one on each end. So for example, if you have a big case with you take the back off of and you've got cables managed routed around the back end, and you've got four, let's say, of these around the front, and they go around back, and you don't know which goes to which drive and which port on the board, you can write, say, S1, S2, S3, S4 on each of these for SATA 1, SATA 2, SATA 3, SATA 4. And then do it on both ends of the cable if they're not where you can actually trace the cable, because maybe you've got a cable managed around to the back of your large case or your nice installation. And that makes it easier for you to figure out which cable goes where. I mean, you certainly don't have to use them, but it's nice that they include the stickers. Very cool. Okay, what else is in here? Thank you for choosing an MSI product. Please register. Fair enough. Quick installation guide. If you don't like the big manual, this is going to be a fold-out pamphlet that gives you the short and sweet version, how to install your CPU, how to install the motherboard in a case. If you've never installed a motherboard, now first of all, when I do the build video of this, I will go step by step through it like I've done in my previous build video, so you can certainly watch that. It's not hard, you just have to follow the process. Read the manuals, read the quick start guide, read the manual, watch some how-to step-by-step guides if you've never done it. It is not hard, but you don't want to make a mistake. It's a $280 motherboard. What else do we have here? Memory modules. Okay, this is just giving you a notice of the order in which to install memory. You wouldn't be installing one DIMM into this. You could, but you wouldn't. But if you do, it has to be in that slot. Install 2 into these 2 slots, and then of course all 4 into those slots. Pretty straightforward. And, ooh, a poster. I think, maybe? Oh, that's nice. Okay. It's folded too many times for my taste, but maybe I'll give it to my son. And on the back side, it contains a picture of the motherboard and what all the stuff is. It occurs to me that's actually very nice. That's nicer than the manual. When you're setting this up, when you're building the system, laying this out here, let me hold this up to the camera so you can see it. When you are putting this in the system and figuring out what to plug in, how handy that would. I don't think I've ever seen one of these with a motherboard. Good job, MSI. If you're trying to figure out what goes where, set this on the table next to your build. It shows you the USB connector, the RGB connector, fan connectors. If you already know all this stuff, this may be redundant. If you've built 20 computers, some of this stuff is not going to be important to you. But not everybody has. Everybody has to build the first machine the first time. And if this is your first machine, first of all, congratulations, because this is an epic first machine build. I mean, this really is a premium top tier product. And that's all there is in this. Feel like a kid at Christmas. I have done unboxings and overviews and built a lot of machines. I've done budget parts. I've done premium parts. I just a few days ago, I did the Seasonic Prime titanium 750 watt power supply. That was such a pleasure to unbox because it was such a quality packaging, quality product. Everything was very, very, very well, nicely done. This is the same way. So this simply lifts off. Save this. If you ever need to ship this, if you ever sell it, if you ever need to send it for warranty, it's just a very nice package. And if it sounds like I'm overexcited about packaging, understand that I've opened a lot of cheap products that come in very cheap no-frills packaging. Motherboard. There is a piece of foam on the bottom to protect it, and I'm actually going to, you know what, I'll just set that over here. I'm going to keep that foam here to set it on my desk so I don't scratch the desk. Under the foam, the back of the board does have small protrusions and things sticking out, so I don't want to damage the desk, so I'm going to keep the foam on the bottom while I handle it. And here we have our motherboard. This is very, very nice. I'm just briefly going to mention several features on this board. I will look at it in detail when I do the build. I'll point everything out in detail, but for here, I'm just going to point out the special things about this board. First of all, this board has a couple of things, as I said before, that the cheaper ones don't. It also has a power and reset switch button down here, and it has, if you don't want to mess around with BIOS overclocking, it has a hardware overclocking knob here. Now, what this knob does depends upon which CPU, 4, 6, or 8 cores that you install, but that's irrelevant because this would be crazy to put anything but an 8-core CPU into. You turn this knob to use hardware overclocking to use preset overclocking profiles. Now, I personally am going to do BIOS overclocking. I prefer a more fine-grained control because this will increase your CPU's clock speed and it auto sets voltage and everything else. Now, if you don't want to get into the BIOS, you might turn this just to notch 1 and give that a try if you prefer to try the hardware overclocking, but that's a feature exclusive to this board. This button right here, you're not going to be able to see it. I know it because I've used it on my press board. This is the BIOS flashback button. If your system will not boot no matter what, this right here is the button that you will press to activate the BIOS flashback in that port here with a USB thumb drive to override any corruption in the BIOS and put a fresh copy of the BIOS on. Only this board has it. The Gaming Carbon Pro and the B350 boards don't. Some other brand boards have it, but usually it's always the top tier. The $250+ motherboards will have that feature. The $150 boards generally don't. I mentioned before we have a 8+4 CPU power connector up here. Most of the less expensive boards only have a single 8-pin. Now, a single 8-pin is fine for, say, a Ryzen 7 1700. But if you're going to put an 1800X in here like I am, and you want to overclock to 4+ gigahertz, that extra power simply means you will have no power delivery issues, especially with the excellent power delivery system this board has. In addition, right down here, this is a 6-pin PCI Express power connector. Yes, that's the same kind that you normally plug into a video card. This provides an additional 75 watts of power to the bottom half of the board so that you're not taking anything away from the 24-pin ATX connector or the CPU power connectors for your RAM and your CPU. This provides power for your M.2 drives, your video card slots, etc. So basically, you've got the best power delivery system that you can get on an X370 board. There are 2 M.2 slots here, and I want to talk about those for a minute. This has an M2 shield. If you are going to install an M.2 solid-state drive, this is where you want to put the first one, and yes, you should. If you are spending $280 on this, $350 to $450 on your CPU, you should absolutely put an NVMe SSD. Which one? This one, 960 EVO. And this is actually the drive that will go into this board. This is a 500 gig drive. On the day I'm filming this video, this is about $220. It's about $50 more than a 500 gig SATA SSD, but the $50 price premium for the performance of this, if you are planning on buying this, buy that drive. Full stop. No excuses, no anything. That's the drive to buy. Now, this actually has thermal pads in it. Make sure you lift it up and peel off the protective film under this I/O shield and then put it there. Now, this I/O shield is here because your graphics card is here, and your graphics card gets hot. So that protects the NVMe solid-state drive from excess heat. Now, you have a second one down here which doesn't have an I/O shield, but it doesn't need it because, well, okay, it might if you put another video card in, but I don't recommend SLI in general because the scaling and overall game support is pretty poor. Please note that if you install serial ATA M.2 drives in these 2 spots, then you lose 2 of your SATA ports. There are 6 SATA ports over here for serial ATA hard drives or SSDs. You can install NVMe solid-state drives into both of these and you keep all 6 SATA ports. But if you put serial drives in here, such as 850 EVOs or Crucial MX300s, then you lose 2 of these over here. And do make sure to install it here and not here if you're only going to put 1, because this is directly connected to the CPU. It's PCI Express 3.0 4X, 32 gigabits per second, directly piped to the CPU. This port down here, this M.2 port, is PCI Express 2.0 4X, piped through the chipset. So it's half the speed, and it has additional latency going through the chipset. It's still much faster than serial ATA drives. Just be aware that the ports are not equal. Furthermore, please note, and this is not exclusive to MSI, this is a chipset and PCI Express limitation. If you install an NVMe solid-state drive in this bottom port, you lose the bottom 4X PCI Express slot. There are 3 physical X16 slots on this board. This is where you want to install your graphics card if you install one card, and it will get 16 PCI Express 3.0 lanes directly to the CPU, bypassing the chipset. It's a hard direct link, all the performance in the world. If you install 2 graphics cards, one will go into each of these 2 silver armored slots, and they will each get 8 3.0 PCI Express lanes, both piped directly to the CPU. This down here is a physical X16 slot, but electrically, it's a 4X slot. It really only is a 4X slot. Now you can install an X16 slot, but it'll only run in 4-lane mode. It's also a PCI Express 2.0, not a 3.0 slot, but that's fine. This would be for a 10 gigabit network card. This would be for other things besides video cards, sound cards, and other add-in cards. Just be aware that you cannot use this slot and the bottom M2 slot at the same time. You can use the graphics slots in this at the same time, however. Now, this board has something that the cheaper ones don't have. This has a U2 slot, a U2 port. This would be for the 2.5-inch version of the Intel 750 NVMe SSD. Most people are never going to use that. Most people are never going to use this port. If you wanted to, you can't then use the M2 slot because they share. So it's one or the other. Be aware of that. But frankly, most people don't need that. Most people are going to use the SATA ports and the M.2 ports. Otherwise, you can see here that we've got, this is one of the USB 3.0 front header ports. There's another one right here. There is a multitude of fan headers here, some of which are high amperage for liquid coolers. I'm not going to cover those in detail. Up here, you have that 2-digit LED readout to know what the system is doing when it's booting, to give you error messages. You can't see them, but there are also 4 LEDs right up here, which will also give you further information on the booting process as it cycles through the various steps when it's going through RAM, video card initialization, etc. Lots of features on this board, very nice. What else do I want to point out? Oh yes, USB 3.1 front panel headers. It's right down here. If you have a case, and they're very rare, they're not common yet, but if you have 10 gigabit per second USB 3.1 Gen 2 front panel headers on your case, there's another connector for that. So you actually have 6 of those. In addition to the USB 10 gigabit Gen 3.1 support in the chipset, MSI has added an additional USB 3.1 Gen 2 10 gigabit per second. This thing has like a million USB ports. So if you want to attach a lot of peripherals, a lot of external drives, you can certainly do so with this board. Sound. We have gold-plated connectors. This is the Realtek ALC 1220. It's the latest and greatest super low noise profile audio chip from Realtek. I believe it's 120 signal to noise ratio. I'm doing that off of memory, but it's basically the best they currently offer, and it's even better than what they had last year. This just came out, I believe, in the past 6-9 months, very, very recent. And then you can see the various ports on the back here, and it has a bunch of them. Very, very nice motherboard. Final thoughts. I requested this board from MSI because I wanted to do a full build video with this board. I had not done a build video with it before because I had a press board that was not part of a retail kit. And I don't like covering those kind of products in this type of format. I need the retail board with everything that it comes with. Out of all the motherboards I have, this is the board that I ultimately decided to put my top tier 1800X chip in. And keep in mind that I do own an Asus Republic of Gamers Crosshair 6 Hero motherboard, which is pretty comparable to this in most respects. Although if I had to pick between the two, I think I would actually take the MSI. And I am an Asus fan. I really am. However, Asus has only come out with 3 BIOS updates for that board since Ryzen launched. MSI has come out with 6. And they've got a beta version on the way. Now, I'm not going to install the beta version because, as I said earlier, I don't use beta versions, but MSI has been very aggressive with updates to this board, and I like to see that. I like to see them constantly adding features, constantly adding support. I've had my 1800X in my press board. I've had the 1700X in my press board. The press board version of this overclocked those very well. I'm hoping to get that 1800X to over 4 gigahertz. We'll see whether that's possible. I'm going to put a very big cooler on it, and during the build video, we'll take a look. The first boot Windows Update setup and everything, we'll see how well that overclocks. But if you want to overclock to the max, you found your board. Like this video if you like it, share it with your friends if you loved it. Remember to subscribe to my channel with the big huge red button directly below this video. Questions and comments in the comment section, and as always, please check out the video description. Links to Amazon and Newegg to price shop this board will be there. I will also put that X370 Gaming Carbon Pro back there down there as well. If you aren't looking to spend $280 and you're willing to give up the BIOS flashback button, you're willing to give up the clear CMOS button, the hardware overclocking button, and the YouTube port, frankly, the Gaming Carbon Pro would be a very fine choice, and it will save you $100. If you're not going for an X chip, buy that board. If you're buying an X chip, this one is the one that I would personally buy. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video.